I'm Iris Muller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and a proud mom of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
And I'm Alma Schneider, a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mom of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new. This is Two Moms, No Fluff.
Hello, Iris, and hello, everyone out there. Welcome to Two Moms, No Fluff. If this is your first time, we are so happy to have you here, and we're just going to jump right in. Iris, would you like to tell the folks at home what we're going to be talking about today?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Today, Alma and I are going to discuss siblings, and especially siblings in families when there's 1 or 2 kids with disabilities and how it affects the other siblings. However, I want to say that this is an episode that is relevant to everybody, even if you just have a single child in your house, because this is how we people split attention between other people that need our attention at a certain time.
Yes, indeed. Oof. And when one has 4 children, there's a lot of splitting. There is a lot of splitting up of attention.
Yes. Alma, you have a lot of experience in this because as I know, maybe you want to share with our listeners, you also came from a fairly large family.
I did. I came from 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy. And yeah, a lot of people. And so I was kind of used to having a lot of siblings around, and I always wanted a big family. Having some difficulties in the mix made it a lot more challenging, but also a lot more normalizing. So what I mean by that is having a few kids can help to kind of take away the focus. I know that a lot of families are heavily focused on the child with the disability. And believe me, we are very focused on our child with a disability, but we also have a lot of other things to tend to. And there's something very positive about that. And when I was considering having another child after Lincoln, people thought that I was crazy because we had so much going on. But other parents of kids with disabilities, I did consult with them, and numerous parents did tell me it's actually a really good thing to have a baby after, because you're the kid with a disability is just one of many in terms of you don't have to micromanage everything, and you don't have to everything that is when you're hyper focused on the issues and the challenges, it can take away from normal positive things that go on in a family. So it kind of forces a parent or parents to just kind of, the kid with the disability is getting the same treatment as everyone else. Obviously, we're not neglecting things that need to be dealt with, or making him feel like his needs aren't being met. But just emotionally, I think it's really more of an emotional thing. It's like, okay, well, I can't help you with that right now, so you're going to have to wait. So it sort of forces you to treat your child like the others. And there's something very positive about that. However, I do want to say that, I know many families that have a child with, have just 1 child, or just, a single child, or they have 2 kids, and they were able to do that as well. So it's, it really depends on the personality. But that's the first thing I'll say about having siblings.
Yeah, I think that no matter how we look at it, our other children, the ones without a disability, are also, in light of their upbringing and being the sibling in a family with a child with a disability, they have also a very, very unique childhood, and they grow up to be very special adults. And there are many advantages to growing up in a family that is unique like that, but also sometimes disadvantages. And I think that for me as a mother, given that I only have 2 children, so I don't really play the hard game that you play, every day with 4 kids. But I think that the thing is, at any given time, like who should I give the attention to, and did I distribute the love and care equally at any given day or time? And that's a struggle, because the very physical kind of daily needs of my daughter can really conquer any good time of the day, and it's a task.
Yeah.
I think that for my son, many times I would think and feel about or focus as a mother about the disadvantages, how much he's suffering, how much he doesn't get. And I think as the years went by, I started kind of flipping the coin and looking at all of the things that he gained and all the things that he knew how to do that other children that were his age or older had no idea how to deal with. It's just and I started seeing the positive in that situation. So I encourage everybody to know that there are two sides to the coin. That's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because one of the things people say, one of the things that I can't stand when people say is, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Like, don't ever say that to a parent of a kid with a disability. But something that people also said to me in the early days was, your other kids are going to have such empathy. They're going to be so wonderful, and they're going to understand people better than other people's kids. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, that's no consolation. Because I was, struggling in the beginning. I will say, by the way, can you hear my stomach rumbling? And my stomach is making so much noise right now. Anyway, I'm sorry. I have a little cold here. One of the things that I really, talking about the positives, is that my kids really, I have to say, they have a lot of empathy. They are really kind, and they get it, and they can tolerate. I don't want to say tolerate. They are so accepting of people who are different, and they give me a hard time even if I point something out, about somebody. They're like, "Who cares? Why do you have to point that out? They're just who they are." So the kids really. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it is the truth that kids, when they are exposed to, and this is why inclusion is so important, when kids are exposed to people who are different and have a different way of doing things and, struggle or have tantrums or have a lot of anxiety about different things, the kids who are really exposed to that get such a better understanding and really are kids with more empathy than they might have had they not had a sibling with a disability. So that please remember that, people, that, when things seem really tough for the kids who are the siblings, it's it's really nice to sit back and kind of like watch how your kids flourish. I do want to say that there are, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are some real disadvantages that have to be worked with. And that doesn't mean that your lives are over. It just means that we all need to be mindful of, how the attention that we do give the other kids, because it comes with the territory that there are a lot of times where all of the kids are not able to do something that other families are able to do. Like, we really struggle going to a restaurant is a pain in the ass. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of negotiating that takes place. I don't allow my other kids to get, really fattening, carb-filled fried foods because my son Lincoln can't have those. So it is hard, and the kids do, and have been upset about it and complained about it. However, we just work with that. We provide outings with the other kids where they are able to have that, and my son is not tempted and doesn't have to get upset feeling like he's not able to get these things that they get. I bring the other kids out, and they can eat, I let them have a little free for all junk food sometimes. Or just, take them out to a place where you get a standard, where they're allowed to get a soda, which I never allow. So things like that, where it is harder, or it does take time away or attention away from the other kids sometimes, but you try to fill in those gaps with fun things for the other kids. So it's all doable is what I really want to come across. It's literally just shifting of gears so much of the time. It's not, oh, our family suffers because we have all these limitations. It's not, if you don't look at it as a limitation, you just look at it as a challenge, that there are different ways to deal so that everybody gets their needs met. And that's, again, that's sort of an ableist philosophy or, way of thinking that, oh, once you have a kid with a disability, you're screwed and like everything is done, like you're finished. That's not the truth. You become more creative. You get, you can deal with the challenges better and you meet really cool people who are in your boat. So that's all I
Yes.
have to say about
First
that.
of all, Alma, I want to kind of interject here because I know your children so well. And when it comes to empathy, like saying that they're very empathetic is just so undermining, I guess, all of their abilities and skills, because your children are absolutely amazing. And I can say, because I probably hired and trained hundreds by now of aides to work with my daughter. But when Alma's daughter, started working with Karen, it was kind of like, I don't know how to describe the blessing of someone who already understands it all without any words, like hours on end of explanation and I guess introduction to the disability life were saved because she just
Oh,
gets it on so many different levels. And in addition to Ayla, who was able to read Karen's eye movements, because Karen refused to use her communication device with Ayla and trusted her on her cognition and overall skill and ability to just understand and naturally with eye movement, which Ayla, of course, rose to the occasion, understood Karen's language, and they became best friends, as Karen, my daughter, calls Ayla now sister, and from another
so
mother
sweet.
given, but still. Became an amazing friendship. But in addition, also your son Levi, I want to remind you, tutored Karen in math for a
That's
period
right.
of time. And it's just these are different people. It's not your typical teenager. It's just a different type of an evolved person who just doesn't like maybe use slogans like equality, inclusion. They live it, people. These people really understand it in their own bodies, and it's just so amazing. There is a saying that is kind of running around the internet about what would happen if we invest the same amount of hours as we teach children with disabilities to communicate with the rest of the population by teaching the rest of the population to communicate with children with disabilities.
Yeah.
And your kids are living examples of that. If we can look at disability from another angle, the problem is society and not the children that have a different level of ability in one field or another. Our world would be a much, much better place. And
I agree.
it just, your teenagers are a symbol of how it can look like if everybody was this evolved. So kudos
And
to you for that.
I didn't do much except expose them. That's all it was. I didn't go out of my way. I did, ask them to accompany us to like the Disability Pride Parade and things like that, but they wanted to come. I didn't have to force them. It was something that, this is a part of their life, and these are their siblings. And I always tell this story about when Isla was younger. I used to hear, Isla's now 21, and I used to hear other families talking about sibling groups, like I need to find a sibling group for my kid. And I thought to myself, "Ooh, am I neglecting her needs by not connecting her with a sibling group, like a sibling support group of kids with disabilities?" And so when she was much younger, maybe she was like 10 or something, I can't remember, but I said, "Would you like to go to a sibling support group, for siblings of kids with disabilities?" And she looked at me and she was like, "What?" She was like, "Why?" She's like, "It's just Lincoln. It's not, I don't think of him as having a disability. It's just Lincoln." And I just, that's not to say that she didn't need the sibling support group, but it was just so nice to hear my own child say that about their sibling. And that being said, there have been many, Isla's not my only child, don't forget. I have other kids, and there have been times where, the kids have been upset, like, why can't we have orange juice in the house? We had this big fight in a Canadian diner because the kids wanted orange juice and Lincoln couldn't have it, and it caused this big tantrum. And I put my foot down. I said, we're never having orange juice again. And I kept to it. I never bought orange juice again for the house because it was just too difficult. And they throw that in my face all the time. But the truth is, they're a little older now, and they go to restaurants, with their friends, and they can get their own damn orange juice when they go to the restaurant. They're not, they're not being punished, and in some form of purgatory or hell because they don't get orange juice. So these are little things that made me feel a little bit bad before, like, oh, my kids, I can't have orange juice in the house. That's really not that big a deal. And a lot of the stuff is small stuff that they're upset about. It's not always these huge things like I never paid any attention to them because of Lincoln, or they're small things that all kids go through. So, and I don't want to speak for everyone. That's been my experience, but a lot of the feelings around, I didn't get to do this, I didn't get to do that, weren't really important, or things that they would deem important at this stage of their life that they missed out on, that they feel like they benefited so much more than missing out on.
Yeah, I think that for us, the things that were really concerning to me were times that our son at younger ages were exposed to like real dramatic scenes in which we were fearing for our daughter's life, like she would choke on food, the wheelchair would go out of control, or with her in it, or something like that, he saw adults around him completely lose it and freak out. And that I really do believe traumatized him on so many levels. I wanted to say something about what you said about the support group, that one of the strategies that I do want to suggest today for people that are in this boat and struggle sometimes with the siblings and sibling relationship is that we need to acknowledge that our kids without the disabilities also have some special needs around being the sibling. And support group is one option. Therapy is another. We can find many venues in which we can let our kids process their experience, because sometimes there's a stigma, there is shame. In some families, it's really hard to invite friends over because of a sibling's behavior. There's a lot to be said about emotional support for the sibling. And I wanted to mention actually a strategy that we did in our house with our child, and that is that he kind of, by virtue of being at home and being exposed to the sessions that my daughter was taking, like art therapy and music therapy, he always wanted to kind of join in. Why does she get to sing with Carissa? Why does she get to do this and that? And then we thought about it and we said, actually, this is a very good therapeutic strategy. And we started doing one of two versions. Either we would actually pay to have him have his therapy sessions with an art therapist who already knew him, knew his sister, knew his family situation, and was able to help him work through art, through the challenges and I guess difficulties that he was dealing with. And also, like with music therapy, like the music therapist would sing a song for my daughter that they wrote together, and we would have our son Hillel do the, I guess, second course, I don't know, like for that same song with them. So he was also a part of that, and would include him in some of the activities. So when the music therapist would walk into the house, it wasn't just Karen's session, they were both participating together. Whichever the dynamics is in your family, and whatever the situation is with the siblings in your life, I think it's good to acknowledge that they also need help and support. And sometimes the help and support that we give them as parents is not what they need.
Right.
And before I hand you the mic again, I also want to mention that as parents, we also need to acknowledge our feelings about those relationships. How do we feel about the experience of a sibling with a disability? And what do we kind of project to that relationship? And what do we kind of anticipate, or what are we maybe afraid of? and deal with our own feelings about those relationships, because the way that we approach it also says a lot to our children about their life circumstances. And I mentioned it a bit about how I kind of change my perspective of things a little bit. And I think when I was able to make the shift on my own, I think it also helped shift some things for my kids as well. Back to
Yeah,
you, Alma.
that's an excellent point, and it's as you're saying that, you're reminding me that that I have to be very careful about, because my feeling is, oh, you need to support Lincoln, you need to attend everything he does, you need to, and my kids didn't always want to do that, and I try. I don't always succeed, but I try not to make my kids feel guilty for not wanting to participate with those things. So it's kind of being mindful of the fact that they need to distance themselves from the whole world of disability, that they, just because they have a sibling, that doesn't mean they have to be their champion at all times. It doesn't mean that they have to go out there and march in every parade, or but I think that allowing them to come to it on their own, to have the empathy and to have we always have to foster it, but if we're seeing that a kid is struggling because of their own issues, by having to always be have the child with a disability, if they have behaviors that could be embarrassing, and we deal with that sometimes, that if we allow them to not, we let them off the hook, that Lincoln doesn't always have to come to a social thing that they're doing, because we have to respect that it is hard for kids, and we don't want to guilt them into being a supporter of the disability community. That's not going to be effective. Having shame around that is not going to work. It's probably going to backfire, and it's not healthy for anyone anyway. So something that I've tried to do over the years is allow them that distance, and to make a point of saying it's totally okay. That's fine. You don't need to attend. I don't want to force, everybody has a different personality, and some kids are more shy, some kids are more embarrassed, and we don't want to, increase their discomfort if they're not ready for it, if they're not ready to be with their sibling all the time and have them, depending on the sibling, depending on the disability, some are very overt, some are hidden disabilities, which can be worse because then they blurt things out that are embarrassing, and we've had that happen many times. And the interesting thing is that over time, my kids have, they all have such different personalities, and how they deal with Lincoln. But it's so interesting to see how there was, some distancing, some, not wanting to always have him around. And then on their own, they've sort of, Lincoln is, I think that they take pride in Lincoln and their relationship with Lincoln, and because Lincoln's cool and he's funny and he's, they enjoy having him in the mix with their friends, whereas originally they didn't want to have kids come over. Because it was too difficult, or they always went to other people's houses, and I allowed them to do that. I really did, because I knew that they needed their space. And we have the extra layer of food. Our house is like Fort Knox with food, and it was embarrassing to the kids for many years that we have locks on our kitchen doors, and because they felt othered by the other kids, like, what a weird household that they have locks on their cabinets and locks on their doors. It became more natural. They were very upset about it at first. They didn't want, they didn't come out and say it, but they felt different from other families. And now it's like, it's so normal. And I hear them explaining it to their friends who come over, new friends, like, oh, well, we have to do that because of Lincoln. And it's so normalized. So I guess, my long-winded way of saying it is that if you're being mindful and respecting the siblings of the child with a disability, meeting them, meeting their needs as much as we can, and acknowledging to them that this is normal, it's okay that you feel that way. You don't have to be embarrassed about feeling that way or ashamed. It's normal. You will be setting them up for success in terms of being accepting and being, adults who have a lot of empathy. That's all we can do. we have been given this situation. We're all doing the best that we can. If we've made mistakes, we can go back and say to our the siblings, I didn't handle that properly when you were growing up. I didn't, I wish I had done it this way. That goes a long way too. We don't
Yeah.
know, we don't know what we're doing. We're trying. We're really trying to do the best by educating ourselves, but nobody's perfect.
Yeah. I think that one strategy that works, I think, not just in families of children with special needs, but or disabilities, it's just a good strategy in general, is to find ways to keep all siblings at center stage in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the best strategy for that is to technically, like, really divide the time. And one way that my husband does that with our children is that he has a fun day. That's how he calls it, a fun day with Abba. One time he would take one sibling, and another time another. When I was a kid, my mother used to have date nights, and Wednesday was the date night, and each Wednesday it was another kid. We were four kids, so like every month we each got to have our date night with my mom. But
Wow, nice.
at the end of the day, if you have 10 children, maybe it can be something smaller, like you are going grocery shopping and each time it's another kid. I don't know what it is, but if you can find a way to really like clear the stage at one point in the game for one child and then another, and then you are really there listening to them or doing an activity with them that they like and others don't like to participate with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we spoke in another episode about how my daughter is now a teenager and doesn't want to go with us to all the places that we go to, and one of the things that happened as a result is that we went to our first kind of overnight hotel stay with our son without our daughter for the first time ever. And one of the things, oh, I am sorry.
It's okay.
Gee, life is bothering us in the middle of a podcast. So basically, the activity that my son was really into was the escalator in the hotel. He could spend like the whole day on that escalator. So my husband and I just sat down in the lobby and waited for half an hour for him to go up and down the escalator. Reason being that when we go anywhere with our daughter, we can't use the escalator because she has a wheelchair. So we always use elevators. And
Yeah.
an escalator for him was like an amusement park. The joy,
Yeah.
you can't even, the other things that we do when, we go as a family without my daughter, or he goes with one of us without my daughter, is like sitting in a restaurant in a booth, because with a wheelchair you can't sit at a booth. So these are the little things that
Yeah.
are like big things for him, and when
Mm-hmm.
he gets to do them, he's really thrilled. So
Yeah.
you
So
don't
they can be
need to
very
have,
small,
yeah, you
very
don't
small
have to
amounts of
like
time.
to do something that is extremely out of the ordinary, but just to pay attention to the experiences that sometimes our other siblings miss out on, and to just divide the time so you can kind of it's not maybe the quantity of the time, but the quality of the time.
Absolutely. And you reminded me that when my son Levi was younger, well, he's still obsessed with pizza. But I took him to New York, just me. I took him to New York and we hit, I don't know how many pizza places. And I'm reminded of it because we took pictures of it and I just saw the pictures recently. And we went to like probably five different pizza places so that he could try all the different pizzas. But dividing and conquering is a great way to do it, so that the other kids don't feel left out and you are focusing on things that each kid is interested in. It's totally, in most cases it's pretty doable, and in very extreme cases it may not be as doable, but as you said, quality is more important than quantity, and talking about it goes a long way. Talking about it with the kids, even saying, I wish that I could do this with you, maybe when you're older, but letting them know that it's something that you care about, that it's something that you're aware of, and that they're not alone in feeling it is really important. Like, I know, I say to my kids, it sucks. It sucks that you have to have, that you can't eat whatever you want whenever you want in front of him. Like, it just sucks that you're limited in these ways. So I acknowledge it, how hard it is. And, um, it means something to them. It doesn't
Yeah.
change everything, but it means something.
Okay, and now, Alma, I want to share another strategy which totally counters what I just said about quality time alone,
Listen,
divide and conquer.
there's a lot of contradictory stuff that we say all the time
But yeah,
because there are a lot of, that's just the way it is.
yes. And my next strategy for other parents that really worked in our family is also trying to find an activity that would be equally enjoyable for all members of the family. Now,
Uh-huh.
considering our situation, I already mentioned it that we found out that any activity that everybody needs to sit down and not use their hands is leveling the playing field, because that's what our child who's quadriplegic can equally participate in. So
Uh-huh.
we started like being very kind of, I guess, heavy consumers of the arts, performing arts. And we would go and see a lot of performances, whatever we could get, like cheap tickets to, whether it was Broadway or concerts, even the opera. We would just go. And that was an experience that I think is both really educational for the children and all four of us, the parents and children alike, could kind of equally enjoy the activity. That being said, we also did some things that were kind of more adventuresome, but as long as my daughter could participate one way or another, we did it as a family. And then we had like a good quality time as a family in which everybody enjoyed their time, maybe in a very different way,
Uh-huh.
in the sense that how they approach the activity, but it worked for us. Now, as I am very active in my community in terms of recreation and opportunities for people with disabilities, I try to always advocate for activities that are meant in a way meant for, because that's segregation, I don't like that, but activities that are meant for children that have disabilities, that they would always include siblings. Because
Uh-huh.
siblings know best how to interact and participate with other children with disabilities, not just with their own sibling. But in addition, it gives an opportunity for the family to have an outing in which everybody is there, and especially if there are freebies and other kind of goodies that are related to being a part of it, it's nice to have everybody in the family included.
Yeah,
Back to you.
absolutely. And talking about going on outings, having people over is a strategy that we employed as well. Having people over with their families, because a lot of, our friends have kids with disabilities and they have siblings who are neurotypical. So having them come over with their siblings kind of allowed our kids to see that, oh, like we're not the only ones, without even having to say a word, we're not the only ones. And it's, more of a, I want to say normalizing experience, but I don't even like the word normal. But it's an even level playing field that they don't have to feel embarrassed about certain behaviors that are exhibited because their friend's sibling is exhibiting equally embarrassing
Yeah.
behavior. So that's a nice thing to do as well. And it's just nice to for the grown-ups to be hanging out with people who just get it. So that's another plus. We've started having some families over where the kids, the kids who are neurotypical and who are not, all go in the basement and watch a movie while all the parents are upstairs, hanging out, doing all sorts of things that I won't mention here, but but having a good time. So there are lots of ways to do it and to expose our kids without making them feel like their whole life is about disability, because they might not, that might be great for them, it might not. And if you notice, a lot of people in your world who are the professionals, the therapists and the teachers and the doctors, a lot of them have family members with disabilities. And that says something that, some people might run from disability, when they get older, if they have a sibling, because it was a lot when they were growing up. But there are probably more people who go into the helping fields because of their sibling or their family member with disabilities.
Yes, and I have another kind of point that I wanted to share, and that is that we need to remember, as the adults in this game, that the relationship between the siblings is also age dependent and stage dependent, that kids
Yes.
always change, they grow, they develop different perspectives, and what is going on in your life right here right now might be totally different in 2 years time. And I think that for us as parents, like the first maybe 5 years of my son's life, the disability didn't even exist. He didn't really think or see that anything was different. It was a normal thing for him. He used to actually create these fights kind of with his sister, like, you don't touch my Legos, and we were like, how can she touch your legs? She can't move her hands. Like, don't come into my room. I know you're going to steal my Legos. And then we were like, what? And he'll start crying and get even upset that she didn't say a word because she's nonverbal. He would like just create his own drama around things like that.
That is
and
so funny.
I know, but I would look at
I
that
can
and I'm
see
like,
it too.
yes, well, knowing the boy in the tail, yes. But
That is really
anyway,
funny.
I just I think Alma and I once discussed this, that for us it was like a one day in which poof, the understanding that something is profoundly different about his sister and about life is when we were once on a business trip with my husband, and we were in Beijing, and as I told everybody in another episode, we like to kind of have the kids watch movies and learn about a place that we are going to visit in advance, so they kind of maximize the learning experience around that country and culture. And the Olympic Park in Beijing was later turned into a indoor gigantic water park, which looks from videos quite amazing. Now, you need to remember, this is a general comment for everybody, that cities that host the Olympics, the Olympic Games, also host the Paralympic Games later on. So they need to be really wheelchair accessible, because there are so many guests and athletes that arrive that have wheelchairs and other mobility aids, etc. So we were, of course, under the assumption that everything is going to be wheelchair accessible and work for us. But we arrived in China and came to the Olympic Park, and they saw the wheelchair and said, no can do. We don't let people with disabilities in. And we
Because they
really
couldn't accommodate. They couldn't accommodate it.
I don't really know, because there was a serious language barrier.
Oh.
It's very hard to find English speakers. There was one person there that was helping us, and for 2 hours we were trying to negotiate the situation, because our kids were like so into this. They just came to China for the water park, let's face it. The Great Wall wasn't of interest to them. They were there for the water park. And at the end of that day, we weren't allowed in. And I think that was kind of the day that the page turned, and my son finally understood that there's some serious liability in this situation. And at that age and stage in life, he used to say, because he didn't really know, I think, the vocabulary of a disability, etc., because we would never talk about Karen as a person with a disability, he said that she's a wheelchair accessible sister. And now that you're talking about like inviting other people into your life that have siblings with disabilities, other families that are in the same situation, our son Hillel would come to us and say, I saw another family with a wheelchair accessible girl. So he would like want us to become friends with them, because they also had a wheelchair
something in common.
child. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So at the end of the day, this is a way that also the siblings really do find a lot of comfort, because it's not just their situation, it's not just their family.
Yeah,
there are other families like that, out there,
and it's part of their identity to have a sibling with a disability. It's a culture. Yes. It's an alternative lifestyle, as I like to call it. So that's their identity. So to just cut that off from who they are would be, would be something sad. It's cutting off part of their identity. So my kids really, they've come a long way too. It really is age and stage dependent, how they feel about it. Some kids might be totally fine from day one. And I was just watching American Idol, and there was a guy performing, and for his audition, and he performed with his sister who had some rare genetic disorder. And he brought her up there. He wrote the song for her, and he was a teenager. A lot of teenagers might not have even wanted anybody to know that they had a sibling with a disability. But this, everybody's different. And this kid brought her up to meet Lionel Richie and Katy Perry, who are the judges. So there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride because these siblings, they see what their siblings go through, and they are proud of them, that they can overcome a lot of this stuff. So there's just a lot of beauty in all of this. Maybe we should leave it on that note.
Definitely.
Have we covered? I think we've covered a lot, and we'll continue talking about this because it is an important issue, and we hope we've shared some strategies that people can use to make everyone's life a little bit more happy and stress-free and successful.
Yes, and as we close again, please do share your suggestions, your advice, and
yes.
Again, glorious fails are always appreciated as well because we all learn from them, unfortunately.
Yes. And we need to learn from you. We don't know everything. We're just a couple of moms who have no fluff.
Thank you so much, Alma.
Thank you.
See you next time.
See you next
Bye.
time. Bye.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can view it.